pushed.
Oh my god.
Now we'll see how it goes. Okay. So it says that the streaming is healthy. I can see you guys smiling. Good. So it means that we are live. Now let's just wait a couple of seconds for people to join in. Usually takes a couple of minutes, as I already mentioned. At the moment, okay, there is Andrea already online, so people are joining in. That's amazing. Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
Dimitris is also online. This is getting faster than I thought.
Exciting.
Yeah, this is amazing. Hi guys, if you're watching this, come in, say hi. Akshay, it's also in. Very nice. Okay, so I'm estimating about Josmar. It's also online. So I'm estimating Nunzio. About 10 people probably watching already.
Okay. Hi guys.
This is going faster than I thought, you know. Okay, so I would say, you know, since there's already a bunch of people watching, why don't we start this conversation already now?
Yeah.
Federico is also... But let me understand, like 80% of the people watching are like Italians.
Looks like, huh?
I think it's probably because of your connection with the...
Madi.
Yeah.
You're going there as well, no? Next week?
Yes, I'm actually leaving tomorrow. On Friday, I'm giving a lecture and then I'm going back.
That's nice.
And then I have Sofia with Chaos Group. I'm going there to cover the whole event with like social media.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna go back to Venice for the EMARC. Then there is the D2 conference. Have you ever heard of the D2 conference? You were a speaker at the D2 conference.
Yes, yeah, some time ago already, no?
Peter, why didn't you come?
I don't know. Too busy, family.
Lasse told us actually it's Peter the good one.
How do you mean, the good one?
You know, the one that should be speaking.
Come on.
I'm kidding.
Lasse's got all the fame.
Okay, so there is a lot of people. There is Marcel Grützi from Switzerland, Milan, Rick.
Hello, Marcel.
Okay, so a lot of people. I think it's about 20 people watching. The counter says it's 15, but this, you know, goes up and down the chat. It's very thick. Okay, guys, in case you don't know, I'm actually online with the guys from Xoio. If you're not familiar with them, you're probably familiar with the cutouts that these guys make. Actually, this guy over here is this guy over here. I'm doing a little bit of overlapping work. Don't worry, you're gonna understand that later. So, you know, we should start this conversation somehow. Let me just, you know, start with the story of the cutouts. Lasse, you know that you are probably the most omnipresent person in the architecture renderings of like 5 million people.
Yeah, that's funnily not really true, because one of the cutter set, our beloved Katrin, she's actually the one we recognize everywhere. You know,
oh, really?
Very, very photogenic, and you see there on almost. Yeah, she got a beautiful smile, so that was winning everybody's heart, and we've seen her all over the world and in Mexican renderings, and we started collecting them, but somewhere we lost track.
But you know, there is actually a website which is called The Stories of the Lady in Red, I think, which is, you know, there is a very famous cutout of a woman wearing red clothes. And she's in all the renderings that everybody has ever done. Hold on, I need to find this because it's actually really funny. It's a little bit like the Red Riding Hood. Okay. Red dress or something. It's oh no, now I get a lot of ads about red dresses. I screwed up my search history now. Yeah, okay, I'll have to find it later. Maybe if somebody is listening to this, yes, this Skullgubbar red bad girl. Yeah,
Okay.
if you find the link, post it, and then I'll post it also on the video. Okay, guys, so, you guys need no introduction. I'm with Peter and Lasse of xoio. You guys are based in Berlin. I actually managed to come and see the office once. You remember, Lasse?
Yes, of course.
We have this weird picture of me doing and then Lasse behind.
Yeah, it was yeah. Didn't you do a cutout of this yourself at some point?
I don't think I did, actually.
Maybe we should put it like this. It's nice in the front edge of the picture.
I need to look for that as well. But basically, the reason why we're having this conversation today, it's because you guys have been in the business for a very long time. How long does your company exist?
xoio was founded in 2006. Before we were freelancing under my personal name, and then 2006, we founded xoio, and Lasse joined, I think, at the same year, and then it just slowly started moving on.
But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was working like this for a couple of years, like 4 or 5 years, like only we two of us, and then at some point it kind of grew, but it was always very focused on kind of at that time like process renders and also designing in the picture a lot.
Yeah, but I guess at that time it wasn't really clear, the idea of making renderings, what's it for, and when to use them, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the time we had a very fixed set of clients. We had a couple of agencies, and we did trade hall stands, but all these commissions, basically we couldn't show them. So the whole thing really started to take off when we had our first website online, and additionally when we found some time to concentrate on internal projects, because these were the first ones that we really could show and that we could advertise with. And these renderings, and especially like the first bunch of Lasse's famous Cutout buildings, they really started to make an impact, and people saw that, and the Baragan images, and then we got more and more requests from also clients that we didn't know before.
Let's get a little bit of a background about you guys. Lasse, once I was talking about it with Lasse. Peter, I think you studied in London or something? Am I mistaken?
That's true. I actually originally I started in Stuttgart. I spent a little time in the US, and then I did my master degree in London. And I was working as an architect there, and but I don't know. London was too stressful for me. So I came to Berlin and intended to be an architect, but then things just shifted sideways somehow.
Tell God your plan and he will laugh at you, right?
Say again?
Tell God your plan and he will laugh at you. That's a say. I wanted to be an architect myself as well.
Well, I never regret not being an architect anymore.
Lasse, what about you?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I was always here, you know. I'm just here. No, I just actually, I'm much younger than Peter, actually, and I met Peter in a phase when I was kind of, I was still studying back then, 2006, and I had always the idea to do renders because I did this before I started studying architecture. This architecture thing was basically some kind of a excuse, you have to learn something, something proper, because renderings back then, and then we met, and I kept at it, stayed at it, kept it going. I don't know,
You kept going, yeah.
Kept going. It was.
Can I just say? Oh, by the way, Chop is also watching. He says hi. Better take better take money from architects than be one. So
well, that's not where the real money is, I guess.
Chop, you got your 5 minutes of fame. Let me ask you, because one of the things that Lasse and I do very often online is, I talk to him and I look for his advice on a lot of things, and sometimes it doesn't even happen like I go to him to look for advice. It's just a very organic process that we just start talking and
I just spam you with stuff.
But you give me a lot of inputs, and one of the most important inputs that you gave me was on this video that I made about the pricing of images in architecture. And I think it's one of the things that it's now making me question if I should probably do something else to further clarify some of those points, because I realize that the internet, it's a very polarized place. People say, you say this, so it cannot mean that you say that,
It's a very, very polarizing place, and it's also very much calling out people for something they said at some point and things like this. But actually, to get onto that topic, I mean, I thought, I think you're referring to this video where you do these calculations and
yes,
really,
yes,
and I kind of there was some a lot of brawl afterwards. Somehow people were kind of shocked because they saw numbers, and some were like, "Oh no, Fabio, you can't say this. A render costs this price. Now we can't sell that stuff anymore." And it's really I don't actually really remember what was the.
Well, the idea was to have basically a scheme with which you calculate the amount of money that you need to charge an image. But anyway, basically the message that I wanted to share is, look, this is why certain things cost the way they cost. Now, I took as an example, a very random, relatively low for European standards numbers, because I have friends of mine that work, say, in the Netherlands, and they work in architecture offices, and they make about 3K after taxes a month. So this is what they make. I have friends in Germany that do the same job, and they get 2.5 after taxes. So the price that I gave for the rendering was just an indication of saying that's how you make the calculation. But then
the thing is that I thought afterwards. I mean, in Median, I mean, it's very, very. You have been very, very close to this. What's actually happening, and you can't actually compare. I know there were at some point that I can remember some discussions in some Facebook group I was in. I think you also remember this archviz for professionals group of Andy.
Yes.
He was always referring to Austrian prices and Austrian salaries, and this is very hard to compare because in Austria people get like 14 salaries a month.
Yes,
and it's really weird if you can't really calculate this.
it's really really hard to calculate. But it's most important is you have to kind of I mean your video back then it's already some months back, and I think I of course thought about it a bit in the meantime as well, and I've heard also people saying, yeah, you have to charge for the value you're producing, not for the time you're putting in, and that's also a nice approach, but I don't really know how to.
Well, actually, I've had a conversation with a couple of people about, charging for value. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a very subjective thing, like I know people say in Eastern European countries that are working with very good brands making like interior shots, and they charge between 4 and 5K per image. It's a process that takes them a month to develop one single image. So they have those costs. Now, arguably, in theory, people that live in the East, they should charge less because the quality of, because the life cost it's lower, blah, blah, blah. But in a way, why does it have to be like this? Why does it have to be that people in the East should charge less? Because they have lower living costs. I think that there are a lot of a lot of different elements that go and the price depends on a lot of different things that cannot be just put in a list. I think that the you need to have a budget in order for you to understand if you're working for less than you need to keep your business going. But at a certain point, the idea of putting also the price comparison of other companies inside that video was to say, look, I gave you the calculations, but bear in mind that there are companies that are charging this amount of money. So, although I do have the numbers and, maybe the numbers make sense, you should not disregard what other companies are doing because they have done it before you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it might make sense that you're charging, say, 1,500 euros for an image because I gave you the way to calculate it. But maybe if all other companies are charging, say, 1,600, probably that's the price that you should also try to.
But I think the biggest issue then was that there was this number in the room. I remember when I was on the D2 conferences. That year there was also this podium discussion, the panel with Jeff and a lot of high profile guys sitting there, and there was also the big question, what should an image cost? And everybody was saying something, but nobody put a number. Nobody said, I charge 10,000 euro and I'm getting filthy rich. And I think this is for a reason somehow, because people mix up things quickly. They see a number somewhere and then say, okay, render costs 1,000 euro or 500 euro or 1,200 euro, and they refer to this, and they and I mean, yes, we also know these guys calling and saying, I want a picture, and I know somebody who's doing this for 300 euro. And then you say, okay, nice, but people using these numbers, that's some kind of a thing. But let's not talk about money that much.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can add is if you look at our portfolio, we don't only do architecture, we do illustrations for brands, and we. With some clients, we develop a project on a very slow base, or with several iterations and there are presentations in between. And so in our studio, we actually quite rarely do this to charge per image. And we also had cases where we try to find a fixed price per image, and it actually even felt for us too high, and so we said, well, we have a feeling that if we can agree upon charging on an hourly base on this, it might actually turn much cheaper out for you. And as far as I remember, the whole thing worked out indeed much better for the client rather than having a fixed price per image.
It's very important that you're saying this because, I think that this is one of the keys also in establishing a good relationship with the client, where you do a work where the client comes up and says, okay, you were very good technically, and you also charged me, the right amount. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I think what's right now, I think good that Chop is listening. Chop once told me that. Or he once said something like, I just quote him roughly, it doesn't make sense in a creative business to charge per hour because you're getting better and faster and you just have much more work but still get the same money for this. And you just faster, but it's the same in the end. So it's just not worth it. But I think maybe it's just a rough thesis, but maybe it's kind of in a way like this, that right now rendering time is not the issue anymore, and it's not the issue anymore. Not the issue anymore that you are the best modeler or that you are kind of where the numbers are. You just press the big button and there's something coming out. And for this, and I think that's really something which is important and which is maybe also a sign for our industry maturing in a way that there are people working on it, they put their efforts in it, and it takes time, and it actually takes the time it takes. We don't get any faster anymore. We just get better or not better. And I think that's actually a good sign that you can use this something which is calculatable for everybody. Let's say, okay, I need 2 weeks for doing this. And that's, of course, also kind of a package, like a picture or some unit. But
I think that the issue then become to how do you manage the client in case something goes wrong or not the way you planned it, and then the work goes above those 2 weeks. Because then, you start to push other projects forward, or, you have to kind of say no to other people. Or maybe, you were planning to go for a holiday. Instead, you have to stay in the office working on that project. Then I think this is actually the real issue, that, we don't want to sell our time. But at a certain point, if time becomes a variable, we need to have a system with which we can manage that variable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Of course, there are a lot of nuances to this. Yeah, of course you have to structure your process, and of course you have to put like milestones in this and say, okay, until this day I want to have the approval for that, and things like and also maybe like time frames already defined to know, okay, until this milestone I have like 2 days of budget. And you can communicate this, and you have to. And what you said before, it has a lot to do with relationship and what people do expect from you, and what they do expect from a trust point of view somehow.
Yeah, well, I think a big key to keep a project structured is to communicate as soon as possible. If you have a feeling that there's a round of revision that you didn't plan for, then just be upfront as soon as possible. And I never had the case where a client didn't understand that you tell him, okay, now we can do changes, but this is going to be the last round. Opposed to telling him this has been the last round of changes. This is a much worse scenario. But if you give him still the chance to react and tell him, actually, we're getting really close to our hourly budget, but we still can do something right now, then this is a much better situation. And luckily we have I think, quite good clients that have a lot of understanding, and so this works. But this is not always the case, obviously. I mean.
There is a question coming in from Panagiotis. He asks, could you tell us how to find clients as an architecture visualizer?
Well, yes, the situation has changed a little from our situation, because when we started doing 3D, you could impress with being photorealistic, and I guess this is not the case anymore. But like our recipe was always do your own internal projects and try to be as good as you can, and then just show it to the world and make some buzz about it. And that was actually how we got a lot of clients.
Thing is, I mean, there are two things two quite. I've seen this in some. I don't know who said this. I think it was some actor. Maybe somebody remembers. And he said a lot of opportunity often opportunity looks like hard work. You know, that sometimes you have to do things, and then something which seem like maybe okay, not my thing, but maybe something good comes from that in the end. And also it's always the thing that when you push something, some button, something happens always. You know, and I think, yeah, of course you could send out portfolios and knock on doors, but it's often the better situation to be in some kind of the people coming to you and doing something they might need.
It's very cool that you're saying this, because I fight on a daily basis with people that write me, you know, how do I find clients? And I think that there is really nothing worse than go and look for clients, because then clients know that they have leverage on you, and whatever it is that they are going to offer you, you'll be pushed against the wall, you know. And I don't say this as patronizing. I think that especially the younger people, the best thing that they can do, instead of looking for clients, they could look for freelancing gigs with other studios. So, you know, contact studios and say, I want to freelance for you, but, you know, and not go into the hands of a client, because the client is going to be fierce, you know what I mean? And you actually have higher chances to fail with a client, because in the current climate of what it is, the job offering out there, the jobs that you're gonna get from chasing clients are not going to be the best projects, you know what I mean?
Totally, yeah.
Totally. I mean, yeah.
I don't know, you know, it's of course I'm making a generalization, and I don't mean not to demotivate people. I'm just saying, guys, use a little bit your brains and don't jump into this too fast. It's, you know, there is this funny video on YouTube about how to jump with a parachute. And then it says, you know, first of all, you should get a training. Why didn't you take a training? Now you have to figure out how to open a parachute by yourself, you know. And then the idea is that what you have to do is how to protect yourself from the fall, and not how to open the parachute, because it's gonna be too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the thing is really you have to build your base, and I mean actually, and that's something. I mean, I've also seen your how to get more clients video, and I've also it raises a lot of questions which we of course also sometimes have, and how to get clients, and how to stay in business, but the thing is that Peter just a few weeks ago said to me, best thing is just do your thing, you know. It's and build your, in the end,
Well, somebody, I don't know where I heard it just recently, is do what you love and you will find somebody giving you money for that. That was not very elegantly put, but that was basically what it said. And I mean, yeah.
I mean, the thing is, in the end, you have to think about what value you can provide, and the best way to engage somebody with or kind of catch him is when you love something, and and in the ideal world, of course, there are overlaps, and the thing you love, the other guy also needs it or is loving it as well. So it's could
How long did it take you guys to go from, say, a state where you were trying to do something until you knew that you had a company and things more or less started to work out? How long did it take you? What was it?
It was a very fluent transition because the only real change at that time I had was that I was providing the service I was doing internally at the agencies as a freelancer. So I was going there and I said I'd like to do this at my own office.
Okay.
And that was the only real change, and that's 12 years ago, and or even longer. And so that was kind of harsh for my clients to accept, but it was a smooth transition. Or that was a point I already had some clients because they appreciated the quality, and then I was starting for somebody who I could work with together, and I found Lasse. And then the next transition that was kind of difficult is to teach clients that it's actually not me, my person, but it's a company they're dealing with, and that took a little while because at the beginning people they still hire that person, they don't hire the company.
Yeah.
And but that took a little while, and then meanwhile I'm kind of out of the quotation.
But sorry, Lasse, please.
I mean, in the end, it's I think all these things, when you ask somebody for a recipe or something, the problem always is that we started at a different time.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to ask.
It was different circumstances, and you could impress people with reflections in the render, or with GI. The first GI rendering we made, or was like, people were like, it looks like a real cardboard model. If you look at this today, you would just like, it's like.
I mean, people were asking if renders could be cheaper if you turn off shadows and stuff.
But that would be a great selling strategy. Shadows, okay, €100 more.
You can put that on your price list.
Yeah, I mean, actually, we of course, when we're quoting, we have these steps, modeling, shading, blah 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 blah, and there was also times where we had these kind of quotings with like reflections, shadow, no shadow, color. Yeah, I think there was some points, or Photoshop, no Photoshop. And that's a different time, and you don't have to mix this, or you must not mix this up, that you would fall into some fallacy. I can't give advice for somebody starting out today because we have gone away and we have things to tell somehow, which are different from the things people do today. And the only thing I can advise is that it doesn't make much sense to kind of trying to be the next one or the other guy who's doing the same like the other. That doesn't make much sense. And the best thing, and I can just say this from my perspective, is build your base and do your thing. But I also
Ist doch ich? Okay. No, one thing that came to my mind is I think what really paid off is to not to go for the immediate payoff in your like general strategy. And then coming back to the cutouts, that was actually like one of the things. Like the whole cutout thing started that we were actually looking if we could make some cash with selling cutout people. And then some intern went out and he photographed people, and it just took ages for him to cut them out. And so we said, come on, this is useless. So we just put them on our website. And and then we put him on our website, and Ronan Beckerman, he picked it up, and suddenly we had like thousands of downloads, and we were getting super scary because these were people we were just photographing on the street. So we immediately took them offline again, and we enlarged their noses and squeezed their faces, and it's just we were kind of really panicking that people would sue us from all over the world. And so we put like an adapted version of these cutouts online. And then when we saw actually how much how thankful people were and how well this was adapted, we said, come on, that was easy. And then we bought this cheap ass green screen and went out on a summer day and did like hundreds of them. And this was like the first time that we really, I think, we made an impact, that people really learned to know us from these cutout peoples. But the general idea was born. This is like the benefit would have been much less if we would have tried to sell them rather than just giving them out. And from giving them out, we had people connecting us from everywhere for whatever reason. And,
did jobs come in because of this?
I wouldn't know of one especially, but I think we always regard it as a big mix. You tweak a little there, and you put something online there. You write in a tutorial there, and then in the end, it's just like we always call it good karma. And
you said it completely right. It's crazy how many topics we are touching with this talk that I'm actually going to be discussing at the lecture in Venice in a couple of days. No, it's crazy because it's as I said, the conversations that I had with Lasse over the years have enriched me, with a ton of different aspects related to the archviz. But it's a beautiful thing because I think that nowadays we're shifting towards a community that it's fakely linked. Facebook makes us connected, but people don't connect anymore. They have no serious relationships other than being a friend on Facebook, which is totally weird to me. So I remember the work that you also did, Lasse, for a tutorial a couple of years ago where you were talking about how to set up an interior shot. I don't know where it was published. You were talking about, don't forget that we are in 3D, so if you have to slice a wall, you can open it. The camera never go beyond like 35 millimeters, I think. And those were things that I was actually teaching my students at the university, So like the knowledge carries over and over.
Yeah, well, that's a good point you're opening up, because there is what Peter just said. The moment that you're giving things away, it comes back 1,000 times somehow. And that's also what I said before with providing value. Providing this value in a way that somebody pays you for this should have, or should bear should base in the same thinking that you have something to give. You have something to give, that somebody comes to you and needs this actually. So you cannot say, yeah, I'm doing this and I get money for this. I want money, so pay me. You have to give something. It's not getting, and that's also maybe something you just said about our community or what. I mean, things became a bit separated. People are more like selling tutorials or doing like online courses and kind of this thing when you have to think, okay, you could just write somebody an email and say, hey, how to do this approachability. This kind of went away a bit. I don't know if this is also a sign for the industry maturing. I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, on my end, for instance, I can tell you that if somebody writes me an email and I'm hyper busy and I cannot I don't have the time to do it, I still try to find the time to do it, even if it's a week after, but I still do it. And bear in mind that, this in the last 3 years has become my job to help others, with their endeavors. So I'm still trying to help as much as I can without going into then what becomes my profession. I still try to help because I think there is a lot of power in being out there and putting yourself out there and doing something good for the whole community, because in a way or another things will always come back. I don't know why, but to me it has been working until now. It really, it's I don't know.
No, I mean it's. I mean, when we started xoio Air, like our efforts went down there a bit, but that's because we have just less time recently. Can't tell why actually. But the whole thing about good karma and just being good. I mean, it's not only in the community; it's also with our clients. We haven't been in a single lawsuit ever. No, I mean, I think that's good. That's great.
No, it's a great thing.
We had clients that was really. Yeah,
not easy,
but in the end we always said, come on, let's get it over with and never mind. I mean, it's going to be forgotten in a week or two, and in most cases that was the case, rather than suing somebody and having troubles for years to come.
It's there was a story that one of the speakers at the D2 conference shared. I'm not sure if this is a public thing, so I'm not gonna say who the speaker was, but there was an episode where one cutout person was actually cropped by the client. So basically the picture was very big and the client cropped the picture, and one of the cutouts was put in the first frame, like right in front of everybody. People could recognize who that person was, and basically this was a guy that was with not his wife, and he sued the company that printed the picture. The company that printed the picture wanted to sue the guys that made the renderings. As far as I know, it didn't happen because those who made the rendering say, no, actually the picture that we did was this picture, you cropped it, so it was you that manipulated the picture. And but it's a funny story that these things can happen. So I can relate to what you said, that you had to go and change the noses and the faces, and
it was horrible. We were really sweating. We saw that already I don't know how many thousands have been downloaded back then.
Can I ask you something? Maybe this is a little bit more personal, but this is one of the things that people always ask me. And a couple of days I had an episode on Facebook with a person that, apparently she was suffering from depression. And I think that, these are issues that the community doesn't take very serious. Like, how do you deal with downtimes? How do you deal with, ups and downs? Because doing a creative job plays a lot, with the way you feel, and your mental health, if probably mental health is not the right word.
I think it's the right word.
But actually, one of the points that Lasse brought up when I made the video is that there will be times where you're gonna be a little bit low because projects are not coming in, so you need to calculate this also economically, and this also pays a toll on the way you feel psychologically when projects don't come in. So there are so many mechanisms that start to be to click in, that it becomes very difficult for people to find sort of a balance between mental health and creativity and the performance of doing the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
can you guys share a little bit about this aspect? Because I know that Lasse comes to me very often with things that are very related. So maybe getting your perspective would be a good thing.
Well, to be honest, even if you let the financial aspect beside, I think that's already an issue. Like if I think working in 3D and in archviz, that there comes a point when it gets really repetitive and you start to question yourself what you're actually doing. And in my personal case, since I've been doing this now for over 10 years, the industry has been changing. The big new frontier hype is gone. I mean, all the software has matured, and actually not too many new things happening at the moment anymore. And being creative in this field, I personally really struggle to keep up the motivation. And I personally, I started to go back to my roots just last year, and I started sketching again and going 2D, and just I always wanted to do spaceships and robots. So and I always pushed this ahead of myself because of keeping the company running, because I knew spaceships probably wouldn't bring in too many clients. So you do all the architectural renderings because you hope that's going to impress clients more. But then after 10 years, I suddenly realized I haven't done a single spaceship. So taking yourself back and start really asking yourself why did you start in the first place? And I think a lot of 3D artists that we see in our surrounding, they kind of completely forgot why they started doing 3D in the first place at all. So it's important to go back to some real fun time and to tingle your creativity in that field. And I very strongly believe that if you just keep doing what you really want to do, then in some way it's going to be beneficial and it's going to come back. And we actually do have some jobs where like all this sketching and 2D concept stuff that I'm not really that good at, but it pays off, and that's fun. And that keeps you motivated. But coming back to the financial aspect, it's not much of a help, but somehow we always have been fairly stable. Like we've been always running fairly smoothly, and I can't really tell you why. It just kind of always worked out. Like we had like a couple of months over the years here and there where we had to start thinking or maybe laying one or two people off, but in the end, like it always was kind of working out okay. And we're quite grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that's what Peter said. I mean, the thing is that there's a lot of things. I mean, to consider, and I think it's a big trap we are kind of in. You know, these or people working in creative businesses are, yeah, they have a constant pressure. You know, you have to deliver now something good. You know, of course there are techniques you can apply and some methodologies, and also maybe if you're good enough or long enough, you could impress somebody with something you just do while you're half asleep, or that could also be the case. But the thing is, normally or usually people put a lot of pressure on themselves, delivering or being kind of doing something good, and that's hard. What I had lately was that people or normal people, they kind of
normal people
when they
not archviz people
not architects, not designers, not creative people, when they have a test or an exam, they are really nervous before. Because why? Because they are judged. That's a situation where they are judged. Creative people doing creative work, they are judged all the time. In a way, you get the red marks, like somebody doing an exam, and that puts a lot of input on you, and also puts a lot of input on the things you put your heart blood in. You sitting all the night until 12 o'clock and clicking the mouse and hitting the render button, and then in the morning you get something back with a lot of red marks. That's not nice. And people get stressed over this. And if you don't have these, if you put too much, if you take it personal or something, it could really go bad. And you have to, you just take care that this doesn't happen. And there are a lot of techniques to do this, maybe.
But in the end, you got to suffer through the first couple of years. I mean, I heard this from somebody when I was starting this whole thing, who's been in the business a little longer, and he said something that it's after the first 5 or 6 years, the general fear of losing slowly passes away. And I think being freelance or running your own company, it takes it takes 5 or 6 years to lose that, being afraid that you might lose a client, because in the end somehow things will work out, or something else will pop up. And I mean, the world's not gonna end if you lose a client, but somehow in our heads you have that fear that if you fail, then everything's gonna blow up. I mean, the time will stand still and you're gonna be a failure. But that's just not true.
That's not the case. I mean, the thing is, we all three, we are all failed architects in a way. We failed big time. And maybe at one point we are failed 3D guys, in 10 or 20 years. But maybe we do something else, and that's something you have to realize, and to stay ahead of things. That it's you can be a professional. I mean, you have to be some kind of a disconnection, or have this from this, and find yourself again. Because of course we know, and in the education we went through, it's the work is the highest thing. You're measured by your work, by your drawings, by your model, what you put into this. But that's something you have to disconnect from again later on to stay healthy in a way.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the issues is that works ends up becoming what defines us, and in a way, psychologically speaking, being defined by something that we do, it's very dangerous, because what happens when something doesn't work out in what we do? What are we going to do with ourselves? You know what I mean?
But I mean that leaves the financial aspect totally aside already. So that's already tricky enough. I mean, you put yourself in there, and somebody criticizes the decisions you made in your creative process, and it's going to be a personal thing to be criticized there. And but that said, even being in a financial existential crisis at that point, it's just a really shitty situation.
It doesn't help. Just how do I prevent myself from not losing money? Make more money.
Yeah.
Guys, let me ask you, in terms of like creativity in your office, what do you do in order to spark, the creative seed in each artist? And also, do you try to include this into the research and development that you do, or do you keep those separate?
Well, at first we started not too long ago giving internal lectures. Especially, we have a Monday morning meeting where we go through all the stuff that happened last week, and if certain issues pop up, or like Lasse or me, we come to the idea, let's talk about atmosphere. Like that was one lecture, and so we give a little internal workshop about this. And then additionally, we started to have a little sketch session. But funnily enough, a lot of artists are just too busy in their daily work to really find the time and the creative mind and heart to take part in these. So it's a very selected small groups. But the whole idea is about loosening up your creative workflow, because I personally, I really enjoy finding different approaches, how you can approach an illustration. And there's so many ways how you can find the right entree to a specific case. And so that's what we do.
And what's also important, and that's, I don't know if I can say this, but I mean, everybody working here at xoio is there. I think they're very sensible and calm personalities. There's nobody screaming around, being very loud. Everybody here is very, very.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna apply a job at your office if that's what.
Not gonna work.
And the thing is that I mean, everybody should be in a situation where he's fine with how he works. You could not apply something which counts for me or for Peter, apply it to somebody's personality. You always have to, or we try to kind of,
Well, respect everybody's individuality. That's kind of became more and more apparent during the last years, that really everybody is his own little construct, and everybody has to be tingled and teased in a different way. I mean, some people they need a little pressure, and some people they totally fail if you pressurize them, and I think that's quite important, especially in the creative environment.
How many people work at xoio right now?
Oh, the two of us? No, it's 10 or 12, I guess, at the moment.
Also, I always forget, and I have this question since I first saw your work. Where does xoio come from? That
was basically okay. We tried to find a good name in 2006, and then after we found something, we looked at different web domains, and all of them were already gone. And
get the picture.
And this was just very unsatisfying. And then I started going the other way around and looked for short available domains. And the shortest 4-letter domains available that somehow made sense was xoio, and the other one I think was xuno, which was also looking graphically quite pleasing. And so that's the whole story.
I was already looking into Aramaic or any other sort of different languages, codes, Da Vinci Code. It's it's the it's
a domain name which you can pronounce in a way.
Most people can't. But
exactly. That's my point, because Like
It's
I
the
was
first point of conversation you can do with somebody, how to spell the company's name.
like
Which is good.
there were people from Spain last year in at our conference, and they were talking about having you guys as a speaker at our event, and they were telling me but can't you call xoio? And I was like, who? Xoio. And I was like, I don't know them. I never heard them, And then I was like, oh, you mean this guy? Yeah, he already spoke at a conference.
Well, it's somehow in Spanish, it meant something like bargain, which we didn't know before. And
so
but we
you
all,
cheap renders.
yeah, the cheapest. And we have a lot of misspellings too, obviously. Oix, and all kind of stuff.
And people don't mistake the I for the L. Solo.
So,
Not yet.
not yet. Oh,
Now they will.
happen.
Guys, listen. Believe it or not, we've been talking already for an hour.
That's pretty crazy.
It goes fast, I know. I just want to take a second to ask the community, because there are about 25 people still watching, which is amazing. If they have any questions. Otherwise, usually I try to keep this an hour, a little bit less than an hour, but we always go above the hour. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. But let's give it a couple of minutes. Maybe somebody will have any question. Maybe you guys have a question for me. Like, I'm shaking this thing because there are 35 degrees in Tel Aviv. It's crazy. And it's night.
Yeah.
It's night and it's not getting colder. So guys, if you have any questions, this is the time. Otherwise, I'll have to say goodnight and go take a shower.
I have to come visit. I spent a week with my wife a couple of years back.
Tel Aviv, it's crazy. It's a beautiful place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lasse, what about you?
Yeah, I would love to come, huh?
Now that he has got the camper, I mean.
Oh yeah, you can drive it there.
Yeah, I bought a camper yesterday, actually. Yesterday I bought a camper. Yeah.
Okay, Chop says that the company should be called YOLO.
It's a secret still.
There is a question. Do you use in-house render farms?
Actually, Lasse convinced me at some point to buy some two more powerful render machines, and as far as I can tell, that's pretty much enough for us this moment. I always I personally always tried to avoid the hassle of hiring a render farm. We had like an animation job last year where we we rented this big block that we put in our bathroom, in our restroom. So that was an issue.
Please, guys, don't pee on the computer.
Yeah, but apart from that, that's actually really nice about technology these days. That render times are not an issue anymore. I mean, I still remember 10 years back, you set up a render, and I put up my sleeping mattress underneath the computer because there was this magical 4 GB barrier that the RAM could handle, and if you went above it, everything just went dead. And then we started rendering little patches and glued them together in Photoshop. And
a carpet with Pro. No.
Yeah, good riddance.
You could Photoshop that though, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, we lowering irradiance map settings and then cropping them out in Photoshop and blurring like the splotchy things again.
I remember, me too, like splotches, smudge tool. How do you organize the assets that you have in your studio by having so many artists? So how do you keep yourself organized?
Well, we just recently looked, I mean, we had a quite well-structured database, but especially during these days, the database gets so obsolete quickly. I mean, stuff that you have been using 4 years ago is not standard anymore. So we are currently actually putting really some effort in getting rid of older stuff, and then we're starting to use the connector app. Like that's something we're looking into, because it seems to be very well suited for teams, but we haven't really collected that much experience with it, using it in the whole team, but it seems to be very promising.
Another question, real time in archviz, Unreal Engine, what do you think about this stuff?
Yeah, that's a wide field indeed. I mean, it's so much fun working in Unreal, for example, and it kind of pays off already for the pure fun of it. But it's a completely different issue selling it to a client. And we had several cases, people asking for VR, and it's actually already even us telling them, yeah, well, you might just want to look into a still image for what you want. Because I mean, already, like, do you want to print it? Maybe a still image is better. Mm-hmm. And in the end, so many jobs that have been started as a VR request ended in still images or like an animation. So it's yeah, you put so much effort into setting up a proper VR, like full 3D, real-time 3D thing, and it's so hard to tell it. Another story is like the fake 2.5D spherical things, where you basically offline render a sphere and then you can put it in a Google Cardboard glass and have several hotspots where you can jump from one to the other. People are actually quite happy with that. We have several jobs happening on that front, but it's happens on and off.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, do you know this hype cycle thing? You know?
Yeah, like, the adoption curve. Yeah.
They go up and are hyped, and oh, it's the new thing, and everyone, you know, and then it's falling down, and everybody's like, yeah, no, it's over. Yeah. And I think in this field, and then it's going up and becoming like normal, you know.
I know which one you mean. Like, you know, once it goes down, then it becomes industry standard, and then people will. Yeah.
And this thing, I think, slowly happens in that field. But what I really have to point out there is, and that's something that that refers to the beginning of our chat now, is like the effort and the time you put into setting up this real-time stuff is so immense still, also with the new tools that are coming out right now. It's still, somebody has to do it, and somebody has to set up, and somebody has to take care that it looks good. And that's the hardest part, actually. Not how fast it gets imported or how fast it gets rendered. It's the hardest part is that it looks kind of convincing or good, or the way the client wants it. No, that's the effort, and the big challenge to translate this into a price and to sell it.
And then it all depends on hardware issues as well. So it's so much more complicated. So as I said, in a lot of cases when people ask us, it's already us counseling our clients if they might not opt for a smaller solution. Maybe even to start with. I mean, if you know he wants to go for VR and he's really interested, then why don't we start with something small or a still image? So you have the security that it's looking nice, and then maybe we can turn this into VR at a later point. But it's always difficult to go for the huge thing right from the start.
One very important point on this is that especially people or many people hate like technical stuff. They love the iPhone. They love to have one button. When you have like a lot of cables and things that can crash and you have to install something, it's already a big barrier for a lot of people. And you know, this a printed picture is sometimes much more impressive than something crashes or doesn't run, or you have to download something, or Steam.
But we're getting there, though, huh? Like, have you seen the new Oculus that they released today, I think?
Yeah, we have seen some new Oculus. Oculus? No.
No, it's Oculus Go something.
Yeah, something like this. It has only one controller. It doesn't have like cables. You don't need to attach it to a computer. It just works like this, and I didn't really understand how you upload the apps directly in it. And you just put it on your head, and it has one controller, and it allows you to do a lot of like stuff. It's something that interests me because I was listening to I don't remember. I watched so much shit on the internet. A guy was saying that, you know, in the future, like in the near future, phones won't exist anymore. We will have glasses. And, you know, the glasses will replace the phone, and you'll be able to control everything via your glasses. And, you know, this will make you free with your hands. It will integrate more augmented reality, virtual reality direct in front of you. You will be able to make phone calls without having to look to your phone or write a message without looking at your phone. You can look at your surroundings, you know. So, you know, a lot of people say that this will be the future.
Have you seen that short clip called Hyper Reality?
I don't think I have.
Hyper Reality on Vimeo. It's exactly that, and it's super spooky. So
you get a lot of ads.
Yeah,
a lot of advertisements.
Everything's augmented. And,
but have you watched Ready Player One?
Yeah, I recently did, and
you know, this is anyway. Listen, there are more questions that I need to ask you. First of all, Blender and Corona. What's the story?
It's great. No, what's the story? No, yeah, it's a big thing to just. I mean, we all know. We all know that Blender is a good tool. The only thing Blender lacks is some kind of a render engine, which is.
Have you tried Eve?
Not yet.
Not yet, but you know, the thing is, some things in Blender are very good. Some things are kind of weird, or no, it's not weird. At some point we just thought maybe it's working with Corona, and it did. And there's a nice tool, nice plugin, but yeah, you know.
If you're sick of some current 3D tools and you want to have a new start, then do Blender. I personally really I love this. It's so great, and modeling in Blender is such a breeze.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, yeah, what Peter said. I mean, the thing is that Corona and Blender, yeah, it works, but it's not a supplement. It's not, you know, it's not
there yet.
Replacing, no, yeah. But using Blender for what it is, you know, like a great modeling tool and something which is good in sculpting and doing stuff with geometry.
I think Blender's got a bright future.
Yeah, I'm learning it too, you know.
It's I think it's exactly doing the right thing. I mean, there it goes again. You know, you have a free tool and nice people. I mean, if you give a donation, for example, to the Blender Foundation, you get a personal response by Ton Rostyle. Yeah. I mean, I love that. That's how actually a 3D community should be. And it's still people write scripts and free tools, and not in different platforms so much anymore.
We don't want to talk bad about anybody.
Yes.
Listen, the one more question, and then I'll let you guys go, because you know you've been very kind. Debbie, yes, I do need a fan. She also lives, I think, here in Israel. It's so warm right now; it's crazy. How do you guys manage to split a large project Is there somebody that does the modeling? Is there somebody that does the lighting, texturing, compositing? How does this work?
No, we're just panicking and loading everything off.
You do that! Finish it!
Well, I mean, 3ds Max is our main tool, and honestly, there could be so much more. And in the end, we still, when it comes to collaboration, we still work with Xref, because it's the only thing that's really reliable to our experiences. So in the end, it's basically, there's always one who's called the scene master. So he's got the master scene. And then we try to see what actually can be split off. And then, for example, you have an environment scene, and that's an Xref, so somebody can work on the environment actually, and it can be refreshed from time to time. And the scene master is the guy who's basically telling, okay, you work on this, and once you're done with it, then I can merge it back in again. So you need a very manual, analog way of handling a big scene, and how many pieces can you actually split it without losing performance. I mean, what you want to avoid obviously is to lose instances or like have double materials, especially if it gets more complex. But you basically need one guy who's got the big hat on, and who's telling what can be actually worked on, and then he merges it back in, which is certainly not how it should be these times, but that's the most reliable way how we can do it in Max at the moment.
The most important is that everybody here is some kind of generalist. I mean, of course, there are different levels. Some are more experienced than others, but everybody can do everything to a certain degree. Of course, people have things they like more than others, but actually, yeah, everybody is kind of able to take over something. So we kind of shuffle around a lot somehow, which is not ideal, but that's how it is. We're not too big. We have to.
That's just reality. I mean, you have a guy working on a project, and you send it off to the client, and the client takes 2 or 3 days for feedback. So what do? I mean, you have to distribute work again, and it's not ideal, because normally you would like somebody to be consistent on a job. But like we always appreciate keeping that thing that an artist can see the whole project through from start to finish, and not like only do the modeling and then hand it over to somebody else. I think that's, if you want to do creative work, I certainly wouldn't want to work in a field like this to only do shading or only do modeling. So, but that also involves obviously that you have to redistribute people from time to time until there's enough to be done on that project again.
And sometimes there are, of course, projects where everybody had his hands on at some point. Like this happens sometimes, which is not. I mean, they're not the best ones, but they have to be done. Have to be finished.
Of course. Of course. Guys, I don't see any more questions coming in, so, we're gonna call it the day. I wanna first of all thank you for doing this. It was beautiful as always. And I don't know if the people at home kind of got the same value out of this as I did. But, it's the small things, and I noticed them. Because, I've been following you for so long that I know exactly what I can get from you guys. But I really hope that the same would be for the people watching at home. Anyway, I'm gonna stop the streaming now. Guys, thanks a lot for watching.
Thanks for having us.
Their pleasure, my pleasure, everybody's pleasure. If you can, please like this video, share it. I'm gonna stop the streaming. I'm in Venice this weekend. See you guys next week. Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna say goodbye to you in a second.
Okay, bye.
Bye.